Good morning and welcome to, sadly, our final session of the Hub Series 2021, where we've been bringing the world of payments to you. Today, our session is going to be about how are customers shaping the future of payments, and we've got a really good lineup for you. Like I know with lockdown, it's always difficult, always a bit of a juggle, so sincere thanks for joining us here today and taking the time to be with us here, and along with another 660 people who are registered for the Hub series as at today. So that is such a great turn up from across a wide range of organisations and industries as well. Today, we'll be hearing from our keynote speaker, Stephen van Belleghem, and also a panel. Now, both Stephen will be taking questions, so make sure if you have a question during his presentation, use the Q&A function on Zoom, and the panel will also take questions if they have time. So when you see the lineup of the panel, you'll realise that there'll be a bit of talking going on during that session, so hopefully they will have time at the end to take questions. Also, you know the drill, at the end of the session today, there will be a questionnaire that pops up. Please, it is anonymous. Give us some feedback. That will be really appreciated, just to know that we are hitting the mark and delivering what you are looking for from us. Would also like to take the opportunity to thank our sponsors for the event. Now, Session 3 sponsor today is Tax Management NZ, and of course, our session sponsors for Session 1, FIS, Session 2, Buttle Finlay, and our series supporter sponsors, Swift, Middleware Group, and Westpac. Thank you so much for your support to be with us over this series that has been going on for a number of months now. So thank you very much for your ongoing support. Please go and check out the sponsor section on our website, just to find out a little bit more about the sponsors that have supported the series. So let's get the show on the road. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Stephen van Belleghem. Now, Stephen is a global thought leader in the field of customer experience and has presented at over 1,000 events and over 40 countries. But this is the first time he is actually presenting in NZ. So that is great. Welcome, Stephen. Stephen is a prolific author as well and written a number of books, published, I think, Stephen, over 150,000 publications, with your latest book being The Offer You Can't Refuse, which is really good. So that's a bit like when people receive an invite to a Payments NZ event, they certainly can't refuse and they turn up. So that's good to see. Just to cover off your presentation today, Stephen, you'll be setting the scene, share some thoughts on the future and particularly how invisible and automatic interfaces will become an absolute necessity, and how businesses will need to play a really active role in the customer's life journey. So a big shift is about to take place, and we really look forward to hearing from you and your thoughts on what the future has got to hold.
Great. Well, thank you, Stephen. Thanks for inviting me to your event. I'm very excited to be here. Good morning, everyone. And yeah, I'm going to share my screen so that we can kick it off right away, if that's okay with you, Steve.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Stephen, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. I'll see you at the other end.
All right, very cool. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining. I brought a presentation called The Offer You Can't Refuse. As Steve mentioned, it's also the title of my latest book. And this is a story about the future of customer experience. And in my profession, as in most of your professions, probably the past year and a half has been quite interesting. It almost feels like we're jumping to the other side. And in the last few years, I've been working hard on this concept called Customers the Day After Tomorrow, where I try to inspire companies to look at not just at today, not just at tomorrow, but to spend at least 10% of their time in the day after tomorrow. And very often people then come to me and they're like, yeah, but Stephen, the day after tomorrow, it almost feels like it's always out there on the end of the horizon and it's never urgent. We always have other things to tackle. And then suddenly, like in March 2020, the day after tomorrow just hit us. And some people were surprised and others were prepared. But suddenly we were in that day after tomorrow. And this is what COVID is for me to the payment industry, but to any other industry as well. It's a time machine. And it almost feels like we were catapulted into the future. In my opinion, 2020 is the year of the biggest digital training course in human history. And it continued in 2021, but especially in 2020, suddenly we created new habits and new behaviors, and it almost happened overnight. And if you look at the impact on digital, people of McKinsey did the math, and they calculated that because of COVID, we jumped like 7 years into the future in terms of digital behavior and expectations and what we do in our day-to-day life. We jumped 7 years into the future. We stepped into the time machine, and before we knew it, we arrived in that day after tomorrow. And I don't need to explain that to you. That's just part of how we function today. I'll just look at our event here today. Before COVID, I would get an invitation from Steve to take a plane and fly for 2 days to go to New Zealand. Whereas today I'm here in Belgium in my own office. It has its benefits, it has its downsides, but thank God that we have this. The only thing that I have with Zoom meetings, I don't know if you guys have that as well, but every time that I'm in a Zoom meeting with a bunch of people, it always reminds me to the Muppet Show. I think that the people who invented Zoom and Teams, they must have been huge fans of the Muppet Show, because that's how we are organized today in our day-to-day life. And it still, gives me a smile every time I see these kind of images. But this is where we are. We made the big digital jump forward, and especially in the field of e-commerce, I'm still fascinated by this graph. Where in just the first 8 weeks of the first lockdown in the US, e-commerce grew more than in the 10 years before that. It's almost a miracle that the system didn't collapse. We had to wait a little bit longer for our packages, but at the end of the day, the system didn't collapse. We stepped into a time machine and we made it happen. And now, hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. But what you're starting to see is that in countries like in Europe, where people can go to stores again, that 80% of all the people that tried out e-commerce are now saying that they're going to keep ordering online. And you see that if you look the results from e-commerce platforms like Shopify, when they publish their results, you see that even though their expectations of the market were sky high, they just beat the expectations quarter after quarter. So for me, it's becoming clear that the big digital jump forward is not like climbing the Matterhorn. We didn't climb the Matterhorn here. We didn't go steep up to go steep down again. We climbed the Table Mountain. We went steep up and we reached this new plateau. And this is where we are in the world. And this is shaping expectations of customers. So in my opinion, more than ever, if we want to be successful, it's about understanding what people want, trying to deliver that value, and think customer first without compromise. And this is the funny part. We saw the big digital jump forward, but for me, the guiding star is not the technology. The guiding star for the future of payments is customer behavior and figuring out what people want. Now, the big challenge here is that every single company in the world believes that they are customer-centric. It's like the guy here in the video. He believes that he is the best security guard in the world, that he is saving the planet. He's convinced about that. But the reality is different. And this is what we see a lot in customer experience. Ask every business leader if they're customer-centric. They will say, yeah, it's just my competitor who's not. But at the end of the day, only 8% of the customers agree that companies are customer-centric. So being more focused than ever on customers is going to be a crucial thing. And the question now is, for the next couple of months and years, what will define the expectations and the behavior of customers? And of course, digital convenience will play a crucial role and will increase in importance, but there's more than that. What we're starting to see is that more and more people are looking for human empathy, human kindness to compensate for the loss of human interactions. I mean, in the last year and a half, in different parts of the world, we had several lockdowns. You guys are in a lockdown right now. At that moment, the human interactions decrease rapidly. It becomes scarce. And because of that, we value it more than ever. So the more digital the world becomes, the more valuable the human empathy and kindness will be. And then we have a third element that is starting to play a bigger role every single day. It's the fact that more and more people understand that we have some global challenges that we have to deal with, and they expect organizations to look into those and to become part of the solution. So in my opinion, in my experience, based on my research, what I see is that these three dimensions will define what the other side will look like. And in my opinion, in terms of customer experience, this is probably the biggest opportunity we had ever had. Because if you think about it, what really happened in March 2020? In March 2020, in most parts in the world, the daily routine stopped from one day to another. It just stopped. Before that, we had our routines, and our life was pretty much the same every single day, every single holiday. We had our routines, and then suddenly it stopped from one day to another. And now we're moving into this new phase, where more and more people, luckily, are getting vaccinated, and where this creates new opportunities to look different towards the world and the market. And this is that moment in time. There's a lot that has been written and said about what the post-COVID world will look like, but the truth is it hasn't been set yet. The truth is that all of us, all of you, can define what that future will look like. This is the moment to do that. Daily routines were broken in March 2020 and have not returned to the planet yet. We're still figuring out what our life looks like, and there's still a lot of uncertainty. There's still a lot of changes that we have to deal with. There's no daily routine yet. But one day, somewhere probably in 2022 or in 2023, we will find a new daily routine. But this is the moment to shape that. The future is not something that happens to us. The future is something that we can create. And this is what my story is about. What are different dimensions that your organization, your industry can look into to create an offer people can't refuse? And where can you create new services? Where can you create change to build that future yourself? Now, in the old world, it was pretty easy to do business. The only thing you needed was a good product, good service, and a good price. And it's still crucial today. But it's the minimum demand. It's what people expect that you do if you run a business, right? And what we've seen because of COVID, that the minimum demand of what people expect from us has increased. Digital is now also a minimum demand. We have grown into that. And because of the big digital jump forward, because of that time machine that we stepped into, digital convenience has become a commodity. Today, we live in a world of zero tolerance for digital inconvenience. And if you think that I'm too harsh on us, or that I'm too, that I put the bar up too high, just think about the last time that you installed a new app on your phone. Just think back to that moment and ask yourself, how many chances did you give that new app? I don't see and hear you right now, but I know the answer. I've been asking this question all over the world. And the answer is very simple. 95% of the people give a new app, one chance. And then you have 5% really, really nice people. They give an app 2 chances. So if you were thinking, give an app 2 chances, you're among the 5% nicest people in the world. So congratulations with that. But most people give a new app only 1 chance. And then the second part comes in. How long does that 1 chance last? And are we going to express that in minutes or in seconds? And again, for 95% of you, it's in seconds. 5% nice people thinks in minutes. And if it doesn't work in the first 30 seconds, we can get really, really frustrated. Technology that doesn't work makes us really, really angry. And we're not willing to invest time in that. So I think one of the most crucial tasks for all of you today is become a friction hunter. If you look to the way that you do payments today, if you look at your role in the entire process, where do you see frictions that you can remove? And let's take a look at maybe the friction hunter of the friction hunters. Let's look at Amazon. I'm sure as payment experts, you guys are familiar with the Amazon Go stores. We all know this concept that they launched it in 2016, and it's brilliant because basically it removes everything that we hate about shopping, the whole checkout procedure. Here you walk in, you take what you need, you walk back out, and they removed the boring and the annoying part where we waste time, the waiting in line, the checkout, the payment, leaving the store, putting all your stuff in a bag. That's where we waste time. So they removed it by using AI and sensors. And this is a huge success. These stores have the second highest revenue per square meter in the US. Apple is still on #1, but they're on #2. They're very, very successful because people like to go to a store. They just don't like the checkout procedure. So if you remove that, hey, you can score points. So you could think this is the best payment checkout procedure ever, right? They remove the frictions. But then there's someone at Amazon who thinks, yeah, but guys, let's be honest here. I mean, if you go to these stores, you need to take your phone out of your, purse or bag or whatever. You need to find your phone. You need to open the app and you need to scan the app. Those are 3 steps. I mean, that's a friction, right? If you have a big purse and you need to dive in to get that phone, I mean, that can be a waste of time. So those are 3 steps. And at Amazon, they see that as a friction. So they decided to invest in these payment terminals where you just show your hand, which is linked to the app, and then you walk in, and then the whole thing happens again. So basically, they reduced the 3 steps into a 1-step procedure. And in the store, it's 0 steps for payment. So they are so obsessively focused on trying to remove every small friction because they just know that that plays a crucial role in the entire experience of a customer. Becoming a friction hunter is an invitation that I have for you guys. And it's looking at details from a customer point of view. Not from your point of view, but from a customer point of view. Where are you wasting the time of customers? Where are you creating frustrations? And once you have the list, how can you remove them one by one? And usually the solution will be new interfaces. And if you look to the future of new interfaces, these are 4 characteristics that will grow in importance. If you look to the future of payment, in my opinion, it will be more and more invisible in the future. It will be more and more personalized. It will require less efforts from the customer, and it will be more proactive rather than reactive. This is, for me, the checklist for the interface of the future. But it's not something where you will differentiate yourself with. It's something that will become the norm really, really fast. And then the question pops up, okay, if this is the norm, what are expectations that people have that go beyond convenience? And that's where the whole idea of the offer you can't refuse comes in. Yes, we need to have great products and services. Yes, we need to have perfectly working digital interfaces. But if you want to make a difference in the market, there are 2 dimensions that you can play with that can actually help you to differentiate yourself. And one is partner in life, and I'll dive into that in just a second. Become a partner in life, offering a broader sense of service to customers and social responsibility, adding value to society. How can we play with that? And if you combine those 2, that's the moment when you create an offer people can't refuse. And then it's a matter of building that relationship, right? You build the minimum demand and you start with thinking about, okay, how can we now become a partner in life? Not just a payment player, but how can we become a partner in life? And to better understand what I mean with that, I would invite you to go along with me in a little metaphor that I prepared for you. And it's just going to be a crazy question. I want to warn you up front. But just imagine for a second that tomorrow morning, you don't wake up in the beautiful New Zealand, but you look around and you think, oh my God, I've turned into a rhino. And you're looking around and you're there in the bush in Kenya as a rhino. I don't know if you ever spent time thinking on that, what your life would look like if you would be a rhino. Probably never thought about that, but just imagine that you're a rhino tomorrow morning. The good news is your first concern would be to find something to eat and drink. And the good news is you can do that. So that's we're all good there. The bad news is that you're not so good with your personal safety. And that's because nature made a mistake. Nature made the assumption that a rhino would have no natural enemies. I mean, look at a rhino. If a lion bumps into a rhino, the lion is like, where are the zebras? Oh, I need a zebra. So no natural enemies. And because of that, nature decided that a rhino doesn't need the best eyesight. It doesn't need the best smelling capabilities. And unfortunately, because of that, it's an easy victim for poachers, which is really, really sad. But the good news is the rhino has protection. The rhino has a partner in life that helps him survive. the oxpecker, the birds that travel on the back of the rhino. They don't just eat the parasites from the back of the rhino, they also function as an alarm system because these birds have great eyesight and they can spot humans from a far distance. And when they see a human, they make a different sound. And then the rhino hears that, and then the rhino knows, oh my God, there are humans around, I have to run. That is what a partner in life is all about. Can you guys, with your company, become the oxpecker on the back of the rhino? Because, and this is the definition of partner in life, because the oxpecker is always around without being intrusive, and it adds value at the exact right moment. Partner in life. Always around without being intrusive, and you add value at the exact right moment. That is a partner in life. Now, some companies understand only half of what I just said. And they're like, oh, Stephen told us that we need to be always around. And before you know it, if you use the wrong definition, you're not the oxpecker on the back of the rhino, but you become the fly on the back of the cow. And you don't want to be the fly on the back of the cow with your company, because that means you're always around, you're always annoying, and you're not adding any value. That's like the opposite of the oxpecker on the back of the rhino. And to succeed in implementing this, I mean, this is about understanding the human behind the customer, understanding what people want, how people think, and then bringing value at the right moment. And I would love to tell you the story about KBC. I don't know to what extent you're familiar with KBC. It's a bank and insurance company here in Belgium. They're in some other European markets. It's a small bank, small player. We're a small country. We only have 11 million people in the country, and they're only for the Flemish speaking part. So they serve a market of 6 million people, basically. But they are seen as one of the most innovative players in Europe. Their CEO has been named multiple times by Harvard as one of the top 10 CEOs in the world, just above Satya Nadella from Microsoft. Johan Thijs is a brilliant guy. And they're seen as one of the most innovative players. Their app is always in the top 5 of best mobile banking apps in Europe. I use it myself, and I'm a huge fan because they go beyond payments. They go beyond banking. They want to be my partner in life, linked to payments. And one of the things that they do is they try to make sure that every time when you need to make a payment and you would lose time, that they would help you out, because they understand that time is your scarcest resource, right? So they look at all the situations where I, as their customer, have to make a payment, and they try to make that faster and easier for me. Like one of the things that they have is a deal with Q-Park, which is a large group with parking garages. So I go to a city here, let's say Brussels, and I want to park my car. You know how it traditionally works, right? You have to open the window, you have to try to get a ticket, then you're parked too far, you have to open the door. So I'm like the biggest loser in entering parking garages that you've ever seen. Now, this is what they want to change. Today, I just go to a Q-Park parking garage. The camera recognizes me because of my license plate. It's linked back to my mobile banking app. The garage opens up, I park, I do what I need to do, I come back, I just leave, and the payment is done automatically from my bank account. I don't have to push any button, I don't have to confirm anything. It just fully happens automatically. Remember what I said, it's invisible, it's personalized, it requires zero effort, and it's very proactive. This is for me an example of a payment interface of the future linked to my banking app that takes care of that. And this is just one example. They look for all kinds of situations in your day-to-day life, from mobility to going shopping to medical help that you need, and they try to facilitate that. And now they're adding a new dimension to it. They're adding AI to the whole system because they know that time is the scarcest resource, but money is also a scarce resource. So they created this virtual assistant that is integrated in my mobile banking app. It's called Kate, and it's based on Google technology. So it's basically Google Home or Google Assistant built into this KBC app. And what they're trying to do is help me save money. So they look at all the expenses that I have, they dive into that, and then suddenly I get a message from Kate, and Kate is like, hey, Stephen, I just saw that you pay about 10% more for your energy bill then all the people living in your same neighborhood, if you want, we can renegotiate a contract for you and make sure that you will have to pay 10% less. Would you like me to do that for you? And you're like, yeah, of course, Kate, you can do that. So I push the button, or I say, yes, Kate, please do so. And she takes care of it. So they're trying to understand how they can bring value. They're still linked to payments, but it's such a broad level of services that it almost feels like an all-around app. And then they're in the situation that they have a lot of users, they have happy users, they're very innovative. If you are in that situation and you're better than the others in the market, the only thing you want to do is grow that amount of users, right? So they need to get as many people as possible on that app, because they know once they're on the app, they will converse into becoming a client of KBC. So they did this crazy thing. They actually bought the online media rights for Belgian soccer. So today, if in the weekend, if teams are playing, I just select which teams I wanna follow, and then on my Apple Watch, I get updates on soccer. If I'm interested in a goal, I go to my mobile banking app and I watch soccer goals on my mobile banking app. You could say, isn't that the craziest thing ever? It is, but the philosophy behind it is that they want to increase conversion by attracting as many people as possible to their platform. And that's the philosophy behind it. And now the next step will be, in the next couple of months, that they will become, next to a payment platform, a media platform, to attract as many people as possible. Because they know that people are interested in a convenient way of looking into media, and they know that people will love their payment platform and then become a KBC client. And in this philosophy, you're not really just talking about a customer journey. This is also a life journey. And this is not just about optimizing one process. This is about understanding how my life works and then adding value at the exact right moment. At that point, you can become the oxpecker on the back of the rhino. Now, if we want to create an offer you can't refuse, we have these three layers: the minimum demand and a partner in life. On top of that, the challenge is to link global problems or local problems back to your experience of your customers. Because more and more customers are looking for businesses that take their responsibility. More and more people out there understand more than ever the important choices that we need to make. I mean, we're confronted with it in our day-to-day lives. We're still in a fight against racism and discrimination. We see geopolitics that become really, really difficult and complex. This summer, I think we've all experienced, wherever we've been, just the urgency to look into climate change has never been higher if you look at what happened this summer in different parts in the world. And of course, we're still in the biggest healthcare crisis of our generation, with a devastating impact on many businesses. So we have all these challenges, and more customers really look at organizations like yours to become part of the solution. The truth is that there actually is a higher level of trust that business leaders can tackle these challenges than government leaders can. And 74% of the world's population is looking at business leaders to take their responsibility proactively before a government forces them to do so. And then you could say, yeah, but Stephen, changing the world, I mean, isn't that a bridge too far? I mean, we're payment players in New Zealand. We cannot change the world. And maybe that's true. But every one of us can change their own world. You can change your world. You can have an impact on what you do. And more companies are looking to connect their business to having a positive impact on their world. Look, like every year, somewhere in November, we have this crazy phenomenon called Black Friday. I still look at it in a crazy kind of way, that people are willing to risk their life to buy a cheap TV or toaster. People are willing to risk their life to get a cheap toaster. That's an interesting fact. But we all know, if you see these images, that this will probably not be the future of consumption if we want to save this planet. So then I got really excited about what IKEA is doing. On Black Friday, they launch Buyback Friday, where they invite their customers to bring back old furniture that they don't use anymore, to give it a second life. You can bring back your furniture, they pay you a small amount for it, they fix it, they clean it up, and then they sell it at a moderate price to other people that still think that it looks great. And it's like bringing it back into the circular economy. You give it a second life. And they leverage the strengths of their network and their expertise to actually make that happen. And the strong thing is here that customers are involved in the process and that it's linked one-on-one with what they do. They change their world. It's not some CSR project on the side. It's directly linked back to what they do, and it involves customers. That's when it becomes one experience, one storyline. And that's also the moment when customers will value your efforts for society. And that brings us here, that brings us at this offer you can't refuse model, where you have 4 dimensions that actually bring value to the modern customer. 4 dimensions that individually bring value. But if you bring them together in one experience, that's the moment when you have an offer people can't refuse. And this is where we are in society right now. Digital convenience is the norm. It's not a differentiator. If you want to win in the next couple of years, you will need digital convenience, but it's not how you will win the heart and the business of customers. People expect more. So my invitation to all of you is this. How far up are you in this model? How far up are you to creating an offer people can't refuse? And probably some of you are now thinking, hey, this is good news, Stephen, because we're actually working on all 4 of those dimensions. Many companies are working on all 4 of these dimensions. Of course, you're working on product. Of course, you're working on digital. Of course, you're trying to deepen your customer relations. And of course, you're thinking about doing something back for society. But the truth is also that in many of your organizations, even though you're working on all 4 of these elements, that they're completely disconnected. And when they're disconnected, they don't create the value that they should. They're not reaching their full potential. In many cases, the customer will probably not even know about it or will not feel it because it's not one storyline, it's not one connected experience. So the question is not just how well are you investing in these 4? The question is how well are you bringing them together in one storyline? And my invitation to all of you is this, and I'm reaching the end of my talk. I'm very curious to hear your feedback and your questions. But my invitation is to invite you to dream about what you could do. Don't just look at what you have today. Dare to look at what you could do. Dare to dream. And then you reverse engineer it back and you say, okay, this is what we can do today, but you work towards the dream. And this is what I invite you to do. Start with the dream, start with the perfect customer experience, and then reverse engineer it back and start building it today to give your customers an offer they cannot refuse. This, my friends in New Zealand, is what I had for you this morning. If you like my work, you're always welcome to check me out on YouTube or on Instagram or follow me on LinkedIn. I have a lot of content there, and it would be an honor to welcome all of you there. But for now, I'm going to invite Steve back to the virtual stage to see if you have any questions for me, and I'm thrilled to answer those. But thank you very much for listening to my talk. I appreciate that. All
Stephen,
right,
thank
Steve.
you. Thank you so much. You'll be pleased to know that got a number of texts during the session saying what an awesome presentation. And so there's some instant feedback for you. I'll just kick my video off. I do have a couple of questions coming through, and the good thing for me, that was a really powerful presentation, Stephen, and you've actually simplified my life because now all I need to do is make a decision as to whether I want to be an ox packer on the back of a rhino or a fly on the back of a cow. And so that's such a simple solution, which is really, really impressive. But also your commentary around that interface between customer, the tech, the human touch, and also the steps that we can take in terms of changing the planet, I think is a really powerful message for us listening today. So thank you very much. That's been incredibly inspiring. Just a couple of questions for you that have come through. Look, you talk a lot about tech, obviously, because you're a tech sort of guy. So, but also, what is the role of humans in the payments process as we look to the future?
Yeah, well, you could say that the role of humans will decrease. That could be a first conclusion because everything is automated, it's a lot online, it's contactless, and so on and so on. So that's definitely an evolution that we see. At the same time, there's this crazy thing, as I mentioned, that if the human part decreases in frequency, it becomes scarce, and something that becomes scarce increases in value. So I think the challenge for the payment industry will be to redefine the human touch in the payment industry. When can humans make a difference? If I can make or maybe look at a completely different industry, I look at Volvo. Volvo announced a couple of months ago that by 2030, you will only be allowed, or you will only be able to buy a Volvo online. But you have all these dealerships. I mean, when they saw that in the newspaper, or when they heard that from their CEO, a lot of them must have thought, hey, we invested millions in this shop here, what's going to happen to us? But Volvo believes that the buying of a car in 2030 will be so simple that you will not need humans there, that humans actually will slow down the process and will decrease the experience. So they're going to completely redefine the role of humans. And in that industry, it will be more a relation building role. It will be celebrating the great moments when you get a new car. It will be helping out when you have a complex problem. And I see the same thing for your industry. 99% of the payments should go invisibly, automatically, without any human involved. But there's this 1% where someone has a complex problem, where something really went wrong. Other contexts where you may need humans, that's where you will make a difference. And it's not because everything becomes digital that human part becomes irrelevant. I would say the contrary. For those specific situations, you can add a lot of value as a human.
Right, and talking about things that can go wrong, one of the questions coming through is part of the friction and processes is around protecting customers from things like fraud. So how do you balance removing that friction to actually the protection of the customer?
Yeah, very good point, of course, because there's a lot of fraud and people are always after money of people. Big concern. I think financial fraud and fake news are going to be the two big challenges in the digital world for the next decade. This is something I think that your industry can play a vital role in. Informing people better, transparency, making sure that if something goes wrong, that they know exactly what to do to be helped. The moment when it goes wrong, that's one of those situations where humans play a difference. I mean, if something went wrong and I lost a lot of money because of fraud, I don't want to talk to a chatbot. I'm going to be so upset that I want to talk to a human. So it's going to be that combination of installing a user-friendly safety system and a backup plan that is enabled by humans to comfort people and help them when something went wrong.
Great. And just on that and sort of that interaction with humans, I mean, there is a big focus on digital and tech. And sort of what are the risks that those solutions deliver have a natural bias towards a digital native and sort of lose the appreciation of those customers that aren't quite as digitally savvy as some others?
Yeah, well, the question is, do we still have people? We have, but how large is the percentage of people that doesn't know how to work with tech these days? I still think that we're there focusing too much and thinking that only young people are working with technology. I think if we learned one thing from the lockdowns of COVID is that a 75-year-old grandfather is an expert in Zoom meetings and in ordering things online, because that was the only way that they could get their stuff that they wanted for their hobbies and talk to their grandchildren. Sometimes people in an organization say, hey, we built this new interface and the market wasn't ready for it. It was only for the tech savvy people. I always fully disagree with that. If the market doesn't use it, it means that it's not easy enough or it didn't bring enough value. The mistake or the challenge is not to convert the non-digital savvy ones. It's to make sure that everyone in the world can use your interface and make it so easy to understand. It's what we learned from Apple. I mean, the iPhone was the first technological device that came to the market without a manual and without a help function. If you compare that with the help function of Microsoft products, that's the Mount Everest versus a lake, basically. And that moment, everything changed and everyone could use it. And the same goes for the interfaces that you guys built. Everyone should be able to use it. There is no such thing as tech-savvy people. That's the mindset that you need to have.
Yeah, really good point. So what happens if you actually take the digital out of the equation? So, you know, what's the offer you can't refuse in an offline world?
Yeah, well, again, is there still an offline world, Steve? I don't know if there still is. I think that what we're seeing today is a merger between online and offline. We're seeing more and more that the things that we used to do offline, we can do now online, like these kind of things, the meetings and the events that we're having now, buying stuff. But now we see the opposite movement, that a lot of the benefits of the online world are now being transferred to the offline world, like the Amazon Go example that I gave. I mean, that's the easy checkout that you're used to of having on websites, online and mobile apps, now being brought to the offline world. Personalization and communication. There are many stores that have now smart screens that if they recognize you as a customer, that the communication is in real time adapted to your profile. So I think we're moving more into a world where the best of both worlds will be combined, and that in the offline world that we expect the same convenience levels as in the online world. And I think in the online world, we will start to expect the same emotional connectivity kind of feeling that we have from that offline world. We're going to start to expect that in the online world as well. So I see more a merger of the two rather than that it's two separate entities.
Right. Thank you. Look, Stephen, we've got a couple more minutes, so I'll throw two more questions at you before you can go and tuck yourself into bed, since it's getting pretty late over there. Look, do you see or have a view on how blockchain fits into your offer proposition? Or
yeah, that's a very broad question, of course. On multiple levels, I think blockchain can solve a lot of the security issues once that matures. But the one thing that really excites me right now is how NFTs are becoming so popular among big brands, and how you can create a new form of loyalty, a new form of brand engagement, thanks to virtual assets. Last week, Coca-Cola created a virtual jacket for charity, and someone paid more than $500,000 US for it to own that virtual asset, that exclusive virtual asset. That's let's say the scarcity part that starts to play there. But then you see a band like what they're called, Kings of Leon. They create a new album, and there are also some NFTs connected to that, where if you buy the NFT, which is more expensive than the traditional album, there are new benefits that get unlocked with a smart contract. And you, for instance, always have front row seats at any concert around the world if you are the owner of that NFT. So you can create new benefits that weren't possible before. And that's my field of expertise, to look at how brand engagement and customer engagement can be increased. And NFTs, as an application of the blockchain, I think those will play a crucial role in that in the next couple of years. That's going to be a really interesting field to look into and to follow up on.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. I think we'll call that a wrap. And I'm going to get a T-shirt that's got Friction Hunter on it. I think that's such a cool terminology. And I'm sure that there'll be job titles that will emerge before too long that, yes, I'm a friction hunter, because I think that's a really neat proposition to do that. I think in terms of your challenge to the industry to dream and at least to try and actually make a difference and make an impact, I think is a really powerful sentiment. And we will certainly take that on board and continue to talk about that in terms of what we can do from a payments point of view. So, Stephen, massive round of applause from the audience, I can tell. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights with us and talking about the offer you can't refuse and what you're proposing. Really inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It was a pleasure to be virtually in New Zealand. I wish you a great panel discussion and hope to see you again soon on another occasion. Thanks for having me, and have a good day, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Well, that was fantastic, and really appreciate Stephen coming in from all the way from Belgium, which was great. Now let's move on to our panel, which is a really great lineup that we have here. The panel is going to be facilitated by Rosie Nathan. Now, many of you know Rosie, given her experience within the payment industry. Rosie is now a recruitment partner at Customised Talent Group, but knows payments pretty well. Also known to many, Gerard, head of payments at TradeMe. Now, Gerard's been a serial entrepreneur, I'll call Gerard. He's sort of established a number of businesses, a few of which he flicked off to TradeMe, and that's why he's heading up the payments in that area as well. And Lucy from Mastercard. Welcome, Lucy. Lucy has a lot of sector experience, both here and in Australia as well, and works in terms of partnerships around Mastercard and bringing those propositions to market. So thanks for joining the panel today. Ollie is head of NZ and Klarna and is actually stuck in Queenstown at the moment because he just can't get out of there. So he'll be joining us from down south. And Ollie has worked in retail and wholesale industry for over 20 years and brings a lot of experience with his previous roles with Billabong and Puma as well. And also finally on the panel is Amrit, who head of market development at Wpay, has had multiple years, which is code for an incredible number of years within the payments industry across NZ and in other international jurisdictions. So please, I'd like to welcome the panel to join me. And while popping up on screen, what they're going to be discussing today is how customers are shaping the future of payments and how payments products and services are winning and rising on a global scale, what those customer experiences opportunities are, and what the payment industry can do to enable that and more. And that will be masterfully handled by Rosie, who will take over the panel from here. Welcome, Rosie, and welcome, panel.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Steve. It is really a pleasure to be here today, and I know to take some fantastic nuggets away from Stephen earlier. Being in lockdown, we have a somewhat captive audience, but this panel will be informative, insightful, and even, I'm sure, pretty entertaining with their perspectives on how customers are shaping the future of payments. So let's get on into it.
Thank you, Rosie. I'll leave it to you. And don't forget, if you do have time, we'll check out some questions at the end of it, but enjoy. I'll see you at the other end.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we just heard from Stephen about how only 8% of customers really believe that organizations are customer-centric. I'm going to ask everyone, but how do you think that our collective customers are shaping the future of payments? Ollie, I'll kick off with you.
Thanks for that, Rosie. I think for us, we've seen lately that sustainability and conscious consumerism is having a huge play. We've seen latest statistics with about 78% of Australians and Kiwis saying that their brands need to do more and address those social and environmental issues. So this is clearly something that we need to do. Not only that, we've seen that there's been a strong move away from credit-based products. So 80% of Klarna payments in Australia at the moment are tied to debit cards. So this is that huge shift. So payment companies sort of need to lead the way in providing innovative products that allowed consumers to shop anywhere on their own terms and having flexibility to pay for services that work for them. And then we're also seeing, it's a funny stat that 71% of millennials would rather go to the dentist than go to the bank. So, you know, there's definitely that switch. So, you know, having our global reach, we've got 90 million customers, 250,000 merchants across 20 different countries. We're lucky enough to engage with a broad spectrum of sort of customers and consumers that are helping, influencing and shaping our product services, both, you know, from an ANZ perspective, but also from a global perspective as well.
That's a fantastic start. What about you, Amrit? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, I think. You know, customers are moving beyond payments, I would say, and, you know, they're by moving beyond payments, they're not only changing and shaping the way payments function, but I think if you look at it, you know, customer demand has increased exponentially in the last 18 to 24 months, not just for, you know, not just in the space of payments, but I think payments combined with digital, combined with frictionless experiences, and really they are now looking at the whole gamut. If you look at, you know, that whole value chain across retail. So they're looking at things like product availability, product research, and all of this is in a convenience, it's underpinned by convenience, it's underpinned by frictionless. So I want to be able to research a product. I want to make sure that the product's available to us, and then I want to select that product. And by selecting that product, I really want to make sure that, that product's actually personalized to my tastes and my preferences. And then in the background, the wheels are spinning around logistics, supply chain, all of that stuff, making this experience happen at the front end for the customer. And then I think really, when you boil it down to the core of it, the way customers are shaping and changing our payments today is by forcing retailers and other participants to reduce friction, make it super convenient, and just make it available 24/7. So in an omni-channel type of a scenario. So I think Stephen touched upon, customers don't want to transact in offline and online modes. They want to transact across both modes, anytime, anywhere, anyhow. So I think there's massive changes happening in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. Lucy, from a card perspective, what can you add there, please?
Yeah, so I think we've touched on it already in terms of customers are just becoming more and more demanding. Their expectations are just getting higher and higher, and really so they should. So they really want to be able to buy when, where, and how they want. So I think providing that choice and ease of making a payment is really important. We know Kiwis embrace new technologies. I think contactless is a really obvious example there. So we're seeing that real shift to electronic and digital payments. So Asia Pacific actually is kind of leading the globe in terms of cashless transactions. So we're seeing that behavior change there. So it becomes really important to kind of evolve what we're doing as the payments industry to kind of meet that digital need. At Mastercard, we conducted some digital research here in New Zealand recently, which came out with some really interesting insights. One of them was that 32% reported that they'd actually left home without their wallet. So they're relying on their mobile. So we're seeing that happening more and more. Obviously, the pandemic really shifted that contactless ability and turning that on at retailers as well. And I think, as Amrit touched on just now, in terms of what retailers need to look at, really aligns with this research, because over 50% of respondents actually said they felt retailers needed to be doing more to provide choice and convenience. So that kind of aligns with what retailers are moving towards doing. I think the other element of it is actually security. So in this study, 62% of respondents actually reported that they are worried about the privacy of their banking and personal information. So as we shift online, we're doing more and more online these days, it does change how we need to respond as an industry. So we need to continually evolve our products, really to make sure we best serve our customers.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And some topics there I know we'll dig into a little bit through the panel.
Yeah.
Gerard, how about you?
Well, one of the joys of going last is that everyone's already said all the things. So I just need to try and, but I think it's just a slightly different angle on the same view is that, we heard about businesses being friction hunters to try and remove friction. But I think each of us as a consumer is the ultimate friction hunter, because we will find and gravitate towards the experience that causes us personally the least friction. So, talk about contactless. I mean, I take my wallet with me, but if I'm going to have to take my wallet out of my pocket to buy something, it better be really good. Like, I better really want it to have to actually go to that massive effort of taking my wallet out, as opposed to just tapping my phone or watch. And I think, and that's where everyone's going until something goes wrong. To Lucy's point, security, it has to be totally frictionless, but then how do we also keep people safe while removing friction to make sure that their money doesn't vanish, from underneath them? And if something does go wrong, how do we remediate that as quickly as possible and stem losses for whoever that might be, whether that's the organization providing the payment service or the retailer selling the goods or the individual. Yeah.
And if I could just add to that quickly as well, Gerard, I think for me, there is actually also an element where a little bit of friction can be a positive thing, because I think it's around that security. So would I rather take one more step in a payment transaction to know that it's got the top level security? I actually probably would. So I think friction as a general theme, absolutely, we want to get rid of it as much as possible. But there are some of those use cases where a little bit of friction can actually be a positive thing.
Fantastic. So looking at payment products and services, that are available, who are winning on a global scale, and which do you think are beginning to rise to the top around adoption of these products and services, given all that you've just spoken to now? Lucy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think, contactless is an obvious one. Another one I think obviously we're seeing a lot of is buy now, pay later. So I'm sure Ollie will be talking to a lot of that throughout today. But I think the point he makes is that it really does provide an alternative payment choice with that real kind of strength in debit. I think for us, tokenization is a really big thing that underpins a lot of our innovation at Mastercard, and definitely something that we're seeing winning on a global scale. So, predominantly driven by security, it actually can do quite a lot more. In the research we see, we know that 80% of consumers agree it's really important for the organisations that they buy from that they're using the leading technologies to make privacy ironclad, and actually 25% would actually pay more to ensure that their data is secure and protected. So we know that that's a really top need. So for tokenisation to be able to take that 16-digit card number, turn that into a unique token that gets passed in the transaction message and cannot be compromised, really solves for that problem. And I think one of the other things that it really solves for is the life cycle management. So I think we've probably all been there, a lost or stolen card, or a replacement card. You've got your card details stored on, say, Netflix. Something changes, you forget to update your subscription, you're ready on a Friday night to watch that movie, and suddenly you've got to go through all this rigmarole of then getting into your account, uploading your new card number. So what tokenization solves for is that lifecycle management. So it will automatically update those card details and those credentials. I think those are two really clear pain points that tokenization solves for. But for us, it's actually really the tip of the iceberg in terms of what tokenization can deliver and do. So for us, it's really exciting to look at how we can leverage that technology to provide new innovations and actually improve that customer experience. And we've seen a couple of those come through already, actually. So MDES for merchants, which actually allows merchants to securely store those tokenized credentials on their site. So for those recurring and repeat transactions, it provides a more seamless checkout experience. And for the retailers themselves, it actually improves things like approval rates. So a better experience for everyone all round. Another area where we're using tokenization that was launched last year is Click to Pay. So that's really looking at the guest checkout experience. So again, allowing through your banking app to provide those details. So at checkout, you click the Click to Pay button and all your information will be there that you can then have that seamless journey. So I think those are the things for us where we see tokenization really winning, and we're kind of looking forward to how that's going to evolve in the future. So we'll start to see it used in many more ways. So things like voice commerce and in-car commerce. So a very exciting space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. And as per the introduction there, Ollie, do you have some items to add as well?
Yeah, I do, and I thank for Lucy for touching on that. So yeah, we believe that buy now, pay later has changed the way people wanted to shop. They want it to be smart. And they want it to be flexible and smooth, that frictionless piece. Like we actually did a campaign a couple of years ago with Snoop Dogg where we actually renamed him and branded him Smooth Dog with 3 O's, because that's what we believe within the business. But I think it just doesn't need to just stop there. Like we feel that payment providers need to offer more. So yes, we're seeing that traditional shift away from traditional payment services, but we're wanting to see that they use that available technology to help understand their consumers or their customers at a deeper level than the traditional transactional based sort of methods. Where you can include loyalty programs that incentivize, consumers to utilize those payment types, competing and rewarding consumers if they've come to what they'd come to expect from a traditional credit card service. Also providing them to be, using that data that we gather to help be growth drivers for our partners as well, like leverage the size of our shopping network to drive traffic to the merchants. And we can share some of this data with them. So providing access of the consumers through to our merchants that would, help provide them a better understanding of, their consumers' likes and dislikes and their buying habits. The payment providers need to incorporate, payment options by engagement through all the different levels. So be it through social media channels or using influencer networks, driving touch points of engagement all the way through, including, you know, on your websites or in your apps or through EDMs, or ultimately through a shopping app. This is where, you know, we believe Buy Now, Pay Later has that winning formula, ultimately to try and provide, you know, as many reasons as possible for the customers to make that purchase, you know, through a Buy Now, Pay Later option through our merchant partners.
Yeah, that's great. Gerard, I'm going to start with you on this one. Who do you see as the disruptors in the local market? Where do you think that this is going to lead to, and what does the future look like for customers?
I mean, obviously, Trade Me believes that we're a disruptor in the market, as I'm sure Amrit believes he's a disruptor in the market, as we all do. But as we get bigger, it is harder for us to innovate quickly and to make to really dig into those details in innovation. I think there's some really interesting stuff going on in the payment space. I think you know, the people over at Dosh are doing some really interesting work, and there's a few others in that space really working hard to try and add value. But it's a tough gig, right? It's really difficult for them to add some value to enough people to then get enough volume to create something that's viable and can grow, and that then someone like ourselves might look to partner with, you know, to use those services, or to acquire, or to you know, just in some way work with those people. But the other option for someone, you know, of our scale is that we can build ourselves. So when we see someone innovating and it's a great idea, it's how do we balance between encouraging the ecosystem to grow and to keep innovating and to build, but how do we also then take advantage of those things ourselves? And we have options in front of us when we do that. So and it's very difficult with customers, because you don't want them to have 5 different systems to be able to go, you know, if I go to this shop, I have to use this system. If I go to that shop over there, I have to use this other system. It needs to be unified and interoperable. And I guess that's also another challenge for innovators, is that New Zealand is already largely interoperable. So how do you make something that's more interoperable or removes even more friction? So I realize my answer gives no clear actual answers, but just more challenges to people out there. But I really you know, encourage people to give something a bit of a nudge and see if you can build something of value. And then if it is of value and good enough, then someone will see the value in that and help you along with it.
Yeah, we've certainly seen a number of those instances, haven't we? So that's a challenge to the audience. Amrit, as Gerard said, you probably see yourself in this space. So what would you like to share there?
Yeah, Gerard's very kind, but thank you. I'll take that. Look, I think the disruptors really that are entering now are people who are participating in the API economy. Yeah. These are fintech providers who are coming in with choices that are other than traditional choices. You know, these are people who are coming in and helping set up the API framework, for example, that like Payment New Zealand is setting up, you know, through the API center. So that's building, I guess, or disrupting right now to build these future pathways. You know, customers have multiple payment choices. They're no longer bound to traditional ones. And in that space, I think, you know, like Ollie said, you know, the buy now, pay later piece is really starting to disrupt as well. In fact, there is a cohort of customers, you know, in the Gen Z demographic who have an absolute aversion to credit. And that's where BNPL is starting to play a huge role, you know, and people, I don't know if we see that, but I think there is massive growth in that space. Then I think there are pockets of disruption and pockets of innovation that are happening, perhaps not in a consistent fashion, but certainly within certain aspects of the market. So, for example, you know, Countdown last year we started rolling out Scan and Go. Scan and Go is a great little feature where, you know, you download your app, you use your app to shop in store, you pay using your app, and you leave the store without even going through the checkout. So it's removed that huge piece of friction and barrier around the checkout piece, and that touches to the point that Stephen made earlier as well. Removing that friction, introducing more and more convenience. So disruptors really are those, I think, that'll start to bring these sort of things. And then I think finally, there are disruptors who are now approaching traditional or even new entrant payment providers and saying, hey, I can actually overlay your payments piece with a whole heap of customer analytics and data so that you can make better informed choices. You can drive your conversion, and you can start to do things in a better manner, providing a much better experience to your customers. So those are people coming in that space as well. And I think we would be wrong to assume that disruption will slow down. It'll continue to happen more and more and more. And some of the traditional players need to be really careful that they continue to match up with that level of disruption and catch up with that level of disruption. Otherwise, you risk becoming irrelevant. There's a whole heap of disruption happening. I think some we see, some is above the line, some is below the line. But I think there's lots more coming. Lots more coming. Because
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, key to this, I think, is retailers, for example. Retailers are chasing share of wallet, share of dinner plate, or whatever you want to call it. And that will only happen now through bringing in disruptive ideas, through bringing in ideas that change that whole mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the road ahead is obviously unknown. We've seen a lot of disruption to this point, but there is more on this path. I'm going to ask for some quick fire answers for this one from Lucy and Gerard around some of the issues the industry needs to improve and change before they can genuinely deliver customer-led innovation. So, Lucy, I'll go first with you for a bit of a quick fire answer here.
I think, it's a good question because we all want to really deliver those truly customer-led innovations. And I think we did some research with Harvard Business Review called Become 2021. And that was really looking at innovation through the pandemic and what do kind of leading innovators do. And while 75% of execs viewed customer insight as a vehicle for innovation, it sounds obvious. What the findings from the report showed was actually there's quite a big disconnect with what organizations are investing in terms of innovation compared to actually what consumers are really looking for. So the example I'll give there was really around a lot of organizations invested in more frequent communications through the pandemic because they felt keeping in touch with customers was really important during such a time. And I guess it did lead to that kind of empathy thing that Stephen talked to. But what customers were actually really looking for was an improved and more convenient online shopping experience, and that kind of ranked highest. So, we call it customer proximity. So it's really around making sure that we're really getting under the skin of what consumers are looking for, really understanding what that need is and what the pain points we're solving for, and innovating led by those genuine customer insights.
Wonderful. And yourself, Gerard?
I'm going to go slightly more technical with my response. I think the industry needs to think quite hard about how these different payment pieces play beside each other, and how we, at the back behind every organization, there's a lot of spaghetti. There's a lot of different stuff going on and different things working. And how do we make sure that if someone purchases using an API, that if they get a refund on that product, it goes back to the right fund source, or if they buy from a card, or they buy now, pay later, and they're buying through multiple ways via a single channel, which we see within TradeMe, where we offer multiple different ways to pay for things, and we need to make sure that that customer experience is seamless, not only for them when they're purchasing, but also when something goes wrong, if there's a partial refund or if the goods don't show up and there's a dispute. How do we make sure that we join that stuff up well enough that the customer never even sees that spaghetti and they don't even know it exists? From their point of view, it's like, I purchased it with this, and when something went wrong, it went back over here. And then I think once we have that it's a bit of a hygiene factor, but once we get that sorted out, then we can start to actually look at what will help our customers, and then how can we add more? How can we add more layers to that onion and give people more options in the way to pay, so that each individual customer can pay the way that they prefer, which might not be the way that is easiest for us to receive those funds.
Yeah, absolutely. There is all of that legacy that needs to be addressed, and spaghetti untangling, as you say, Gerard. Is it possible to protect privacy? We've touched on this a little bit, but this is an important theme, while also enhancing customer experience and innovating. What protections do you think customers really do expect from payments and financial services? Ollie, this is a great one for you to start with, please.
Yeah, and I think like as a payment service, consumers want to know that we're PCI safe. So for those that don't understand that, I'll just touch on it a little bit, but it's a security standard that any company or organization that accepts or transmits or stores private data of cardholders is compliant to these security measures. And I suppose for us, since 2017, Klarna has actually been a registered bank in Europe. So this is something that's really important to us. So much so that us as a business, we actually have employed 10 full-time hackers that work with inside our business. So they're there to test every level of security day in, day out. But it doesn't stop there. We actually have a bounty program out there to the market as well. So if Hacker Johnny at home wants to have a crack at our systems and finds a flaw, then we'll provide a bounty to them as well to reward them. I suppose it will go depending on the exposure or the size of importance to what they've sort of cracked, that will scale that bounty program back to them. So then we can, try and reduce that impact on the business or the customers or the merchants as best as possible. But I don't think it just stops there. Like, that external hacking part is one aspect of it, but there's also that internal aspect of it as well. We all work within the business that's in payments, and we need to understand, if we're seeing something in our internal systems, is there a flaw there? Is there a gap? So we need to take control of that as a business as well. So we have internal Slack channels that are managed 24/7 hours a day. So you can lodge anything that you can see, and that's always going to be looked at a real quick time. And the other thing is we also have ongoing training for every staff member in regards to these types of things as well. So that happens every quarter for us. So I think, it's not only external that you need to worry about from that, but you also need to worry about those sort of breaches that you can see from an internal perspective and try and stop the impact for the consumers, the merchants, or the overall business.
Yeah, a lot to take into consideration there, and a great coverage. Amrit, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. How do you protect privacy whilst trying to innovate and bringing new services to the market? I think customers absolutely have a right and are demanding to know what we do with their data. And therefore there are things coming from customers which we did not see previously, and things like customers are saying, hey, I want the right to be forgotten. How do I ensure that you erase everything that you hold about me on your systems? And how do I protect my privacy? I think one outcome of that is, and these are table stakes, any organization entering the market to provide payment services at a minimum has to have that real high level of protection around personal privacy data, and ensuring customers have access and an understanding to how that data is protected. And part of that is, I think, with these organizations is continual monitoring and surveillance of the privacy data. It's not a set and forget anymore. There is an ongoing vigilance aspect to it. You are continually ensuring that you're ahead of the curveball. You're ahead of the of someone trying to break into your systems and steal data. These are just table stakes, I think. Customers also want to know, what do you do with their data? So I think making it really simplistic for them to understand, rather than bombarding them with 37 pages of privacy-related clauses and terms and conditions on your website, it becomes a really important. How do you make it super simple for customers to understand? That gives them the confidence that you are protecting their privacy and their data. Part of this, I think, will come down, once the customer data right regulation starts to flow through from the government later this year. I think part of it will start to come through from that. And then I think finally there is a little bit of a balance between privacy and also making sure you're monitoring for the baddies, if you like. So things like layering anti-money laundering on top of the way you protect privacy. How do you ensure that you are you are protecting what you need to protect, but you're also surfacing things that might be actually a risk to the whole privacy and to the privacy system. So I think there's a number of aspects in that. It'll be really interesting to see towards the end of this year, what comes out in the CDR legislation from the government, and hopefully that starts to shape, the whole piece around privacy.
Yeah, it's that fine line balance, and obviously needing to be continuously reviewed as the technology evolves and changes.
Yep.
Lucy, this one's for you. Gen Z expect their financial institutions to...
Hey, sorry, Rosie, I can't hear you. I don't know whether that's just me.
That was me. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
User error. It's not a webinar unless there's a technical difficulty.
Of course, yeah.
So, Lucy, this is for you. Gen Z expect their financial institutions to stand for something that they can get behind. What should financial institutions do to ensure they retain a Gen Z audience who are more concerned about transparency and social environment issues?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one, because for me, I actually think we need to, even before you go to the social issues, it's actually around the UX for Gen Z. So they're about 30% of the world's population today, and there'll be a third of global consumers by 2030. So they have like a really high spending power. And the thing with this generation is, they probably have the highest expectations and demands of all segments. Because they actually live their lives on their smartphones. They don't just use their devices and phones, they do everything on them. And I think that's why we've seen some really great developments that Stephen touched on with KBC Bank in Belgium, is the fact that, they're bringing, football scores into it, because they're looking at it as a platform where actually I can engage and do everything on there. And obviously with that really has to come that user experience. So I think that's really important for Gen Z, is that customer experience, having it really seamless, being able to do everything in one place. And we've seen some really good examples of that. So I'm definitely going to be checking out KBC Bank, because I'm not familiar with that one. But I think another area where we're seeing that experience really excel is in the buy now, pay later space, because usually the apps provide that really great experience, and on the retail side, and that's continually evolving, as we go forward. So for me, it starts with the user experience. And then obviously there's lots of research that just shows how important social issues are to Gen Z. And I think that's really a product of the fact that they've grown up in a society where those issues are at the forefront and everybody's talking about them more so than any other generation. So it's very important to them, and it starts to impact their key life decisions. So Deloitte did a study that showed that 70% of respondents actually said that they look at all those sorts of things, all those ESG goals, to make a decision whether they'll work for that organization. They need those values to align to be able to work there. So it really is impacting Gen Z in a big way. So I think all organizations have sustainability and social goals, and that's very important for all of us just in general. So I think it's really important that financial institutions talk about these things. We've seen some great partnerships recently. So Westpac and their partnership with Kogo, which allows people to track their personal carbon footprint through their spending behavior, which is really cool, right? So you can track that and, make changes as you see fit. So I think starting to get those things out there. For Mastercard, we formed the Priceless Planet Coalition with a kind of a large array of our partners across the globe, some here in Australia as well, and New Zealand. And really our pledge was to plant 100 million trees by 2025. So that's kind of one of the kind of more tactical things that we're doing really to support that pledge. And actually, through our sponsorship with the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, we were meant to be out planting trees next weekend. So, because of lockdown, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So I'm very much looking forward to those post-lockdown freedoms and getting onto Kowau Island and helping with their regeneration project. So very important for financial institutions to really talk about what they're doing from a sustainability and social issues perspective.
Yes, certainly it is being considered, and there is a drive towards that. So Oliver, what are your thoughts in that space?
Yeah, I mimic some of what Lucy had to say. Like some of the research we've seen lately is that 57% of consumers feel that conscious consumerism is unlikely to decrease in the years to come. So they definitely indicated that, you know, they are looking at a corporate social responsibility aspect from the brands and making sure that aligns with their own personal values, to being more conscious and supporting the brands that, you know, are authentic and consistent with their approaches. And, you know, this can also impact them from switching brand loyalty as well. But, you know, it's such an easy thing to go down this path and do something that's quite tokenism. But, you know, what we've seen is that consumers want to see the time, the money, the effort, and the responses that you get out of that. So it's like, you don't want to just do one campaign. You want to do it for a long period of time. You want to show where you've come from, where you've got to. So be it how many plastic bottles have you recycled, you know, how many trees have you planted? Like that's such an easy one that you can incorporate. And then, or what have you done to help fix your supply chain? Are you a better manufacturer now than you were yesterday? So, you know, we believe our industry has a responsibility to that, and we want to sort of emphasize that within our platform to give those brands an opportunity to have a voice and reach out there and tell that. So like Mastercard, we've done some things there as well. So we've pledged 1% of capital in our capital raising process to be put towards sustainable initiatives, and everyone that we do forward will continue to do that. So we've got this part of our business which is called Give One, which is trying to give back. And I suppose we're hoping that this inspires our industry. And let's face it, if we put $10 million into it, it's not going to change the world. But if a lot of big businesses do that, then obviously that's going to make a huge difference as well. Another impact that we've put into, you know, our app is a carbon tracker. So consumer can track, you know, their spending and their footprint of their purchases within the app. But I think another thing that people need to take into consideration is that social environmental issues around financial purchases. You know, we need to be considerate that we're not putting people into hardship or the overspending as well. So I think that's another part of the problem that needs to be considered.
Yeah, all really relevant points and things that so much the audience can take away with them. Gerard, I'm going to go to you for this one. Given Stephen's comments from McKinsey around 2020 accelerating digital 7 years and 12 months, and then asking us to consider what the real percentage of offline versus online reality is. How do you identify with those who are digitally excluded, and how is your business addressing it?
It's an interesting question for Trade Me, which, I mean, Trade Me is a 20-year-old business, but we are, you know, we're 100% online. So if you're not online, it's not a service that you can access. However, because we're 20 years old, we have users who will have started using our services 20 years ago on desktop PCs, that they're still expecting those to potentially, you know, some of our users, you wouldn't expect the PC would still be working after 20 years, but there are some of our users who are still using quite old technology who are wanting to still access our services, while we're pushing more and more into new technologies. You know, 60-something% of our traffic is off mobile now. So the ability to support those older versions becomes harder and harder, and so our desktop site is changing significantly. It's really difficult for us to address that. You know, you have to make some really tough decisions as a business around at what point are you going to stop supporting those older versions. And even within mobile devices, we can see old mobile devices running old versions of our apps that we know we're going to have to stop supporting soon. And we support them for as long as we can, but when we get down to, you know, low double-digit numbers of users accessing via a method, we have to make the tough call to then turn those off. And especially sometimes there's security reasons why we have to as well, because, you know, those older versions are no longer able to update, and so there's potentially vulnerabilities there for those users. But sadly, my answer isn't we're not addressing it by being wonderfully inclusive. We're being as inclusive as we can, but at the end of the day, at some point, we need to turn those users off. But we are very aware that in the payment space, you know, we still, for a very long time, enabled users to do bank deposits to be able to top up their Trade Me accounts. We've recently had to stop that, unfortunately, because of AML reasons, actually, not because of anything we were doing. But it's Yeah, it's difficult, and it really is tough. And although, you know, there was the comment earlier that no one should be able to be excluded because, you know, because there's this 170-year-old guy who figured out how to use Zoom. I do worry about those people in society who either, you know, don't have the discretionary income to be able to afford to do these things, or people who, you know, I think about the journey of my own parents. They're in cognitive decline. It's like, well, how are they going to do that? Because they have trouble navigating, you know, the world around them anyway, as opposed to the online world. So how are they going to access these services? And I don't think we've answered it in a great way. And I still think there's a lot of work for people to do. So when someone cracks it, that'll be amazing. And we'll jump on that bandwagon when that happens. Oh, you're muted, Rosie.
Just realized that in time this time. It is about creating that bridge at the moment as things do continue to accelerate at pace. We're going to round up with the last question now. I'll start with you, Ollie. If you could deliver one message to the payments industry about customer experience or innovation in just 1 minute, what would that message be?
I think first and foremost, listen to your customers, making sure that you're collaborating with partners that can help leverage your experience to be better for not only for you, but for your customers as well. And provide a way for your customers to shop anywhere, learn about how to protect their data, but learn how you can, you know, utilize that data to provide opportunities for your partners and how you can help them grow with their customers. Learn how they shop, build smooth payment options with less friction, as we've spoken about. And have that understanding that, you know, and I think Gerard just sort of touched on it, like not every customer is the same. So make sure you're using the right targeting to the right audience, using the right partners while facilitating, you know, the payment options for multiple demographics. You know, today's customers are smarter with access to more information and technology, potentially in their own pocket than ever before. So I think that's probably my message. And I probably, one question is that's been lingering for me this whole conversation. I'm also wondering how big is Gerard's wallet if he can't take it out of his pocket?
Well, we can get to that because Gerard's next. So
yeah,
how
cool.
big, Gerard, is your wallet? And please answer the question in a minute as well.
Oh, that's very funny. It's well, it's got so many bits of plastic for all the different loyalty things and all the different, you know, it's insane. It doesn't actually, I can't physically remove it. It's too, sorry, too many. I don't actually have an answer for that question. That's very funny. I think one of the big takeaways for me from this is I actually really like that. I'm reading it because I wrote it down. Be an oxpecker on a rhino, not a fly on a cow. Like I really do like that in terms of what the payments industry needs to think about. People only want to pay in the last little moment. You know, they don't want to be reminded about payments all the way through the process when they're going through. But the other piece about innovation, having, you know, from my life and all the things I've done is get something in market quick, be prepared to experiment, and be prepared to turn stuff off that doesn't work. Like you're not going to get market data without putting something in market. People survey and survey and survey and check and check and check, but you know, deliver something and then turn it on and then see what happens, and if it doesn't work, turn it off. I know that can be really disruptive for customers who are early adopters, but a lot of those early adopter customers are quite used to the fact that things will shift and move around them.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and they are agile. They tend to be more agile, so they're welcome to it. Lucy, how about yourself?
Yeah, for me, it comes back to that customer proximity. So really making sure we're doing that due diligence to get it right for the customer. So I think as payment nerds, it's very easy for us to sit in a room and come up with these amazing ideas and concepts and solutions. And then you put them in front of a consumer and they're kind of like, oh, that doesn't quite make sense to me. So for me, it's around that customer proximity, keeping close to them to make sure that we're innovating the right way and using data-driven insights to really kind of make that like the proper direction that we should be taking new solutions to.
I love that. And to round us off, Amrit.
Yeah, I think the previous speakers have touched upon most aspects here, and I think, you know, it's that whole piece around the customer experience opportunity, you know, the human-centered design across all customer journeys. And one thing that we use really successfully, and have actually refined and started using more and more successfully, is the discover and design phase when starting out on new product development. So, looping in customers at that early stage in terms of, how relevant is this product for a customer? We might think it's super relevant for us and it's the best things in sliced cheese, but, it might not be from a customer's perspective. And then having, I think, the courage to fast fail. So stand up products really, really quickly, try them out with your customers. They don't work, you kill them and you move on to the next one. Sorry, you kill the product, not the customer. So having that minimum viable proposition mentality as well in an agile manner, and Gerard talked about that. So I think, the key one for me is, keeping the customer at the center of all payment journeys, and then designing those journeys, what they might figure out and look like, but absolutely from a customer's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, sliced cheese is pretty great. So if you can get a payments method that equates to that, you're doing a fantastic job. Steve, I'm happy to hand over the panel for the questions that you might have access to.
Look, thank you. We're actually up against time, Rosie. So,
yes.
I just want to thank the panel for what was a really insightful and thought-provoking discussion, and also threw out some challenges to the industry as well, as did Stephen. So thank you so much for your time and contribution to round off what has been quite an awesome Hub series. What a great way to end. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, no, that's great. You go and have an awesome day. And with negative 1 minute, I'll do a quick wrap on the way out as we go. Again, thank you so much for Stephen and the panel today. I think that was really good challenges that are thrown out to the industry. And of course, thank to our Session 3 sponsor of today, which is Tax Management NZ. What a wrap. The Hub Series 2021 is now coming to a close. And just sort of as we reflect back through the series, we kicked off with an in-person event way back in May, which was really a networking event, and also acknowledged our 10th birthday as we went through. We then looked at and did bring the world of payments to you, including coverage from Australia, the UK, Europe, USA, Asia, and of course, NZ as well. With the 3 sessions that we held, the first one of who's shaping the future of payments, that was really useful. Dave Birch was the keynote there, and then talked a bit about and shared his thoughts around the central bank digital currency and the role that will play in shaping that future. Second one focused on tech, and Melissa Clark-Reynolds, as our keynote, really talked about the future of what she's seen in there, and particularly around the various business models that are emerging and that she's sort of looking to back. And of course, Stephen today with around how customers, bringing together the customer, the tech, the human touch, and how to change the world, and the fact that we have all got a role to play in making that happen and making an impact. So just to wrap that up, that has been a really fantastic series. It's been a privilege to be able to host those thought leaders that have been with us over that period, and hopefully you've also enjoyed the content and quality that has been delivered through the Hub Series 2021. So thank you very much for joining us today. Just a couple of things on the way through. Just again, final shout out for our sponsors for the series. Session 1 sponsor FIS, Session 2 sponsor Buttle Finlay, and today with Tax Management NZ, and obviously our series supporter sponsors with Swift, Middleware Group and Westpac. Thank you very much for your support for what has been a very successful Hub series for 2021. The feedback has been really, really positive from across the industry. As I mentioned earlier, at the end of this session, a small questionnaire will pop up, survey. It is anonymous. Please give us some feedback on what you thought of today and of the series. And just a reminder that today's session has been recorded, and we'll let you know when that recording is available for us, for you to view online. Also online, you can go and grab our environmental scan that has recently been released. Please go and download that, a copy of that. It does give an update in terms of 2021 view of what's happening globally and the impact that that has on the NZ. Please share that. It is a really, really good read, really insightful, and I'm sure you'll get significant value by grabbing a cup of tea and having a good look at the environmental scan. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you again for joining us throughout the whole series. Please stay safe, take care, and make a difference. Bye for now.